Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to be talking about arguments today, and therefore we're going to very briefly discuss how to analyze and assess arguments. Last week, at the very end of the lecture for the written part, I was talking about how we can analyze sets of statements, and we can look at them and figure out if they're consistent or inconsistent. We often do this when we're thinking about somebody, are they telling the truth or not? We can look at it and say, if this is true, could this also be true as well? So we don't just assess sets of statements, but once we know that set of statements is actually trying to make a claim that it's an argument, an attempt to argue, then we're going to analyze it a different way, not just to see if the sentences could be true together, but if the premises are true, would the conclusion follow necessarily? We're going to normally do necessarily because we're going to do a lot of deductive. Basically, it's two types, right? Deduction and induction. And we're going to be spending a lot of time trying to figure out if arguments are valid or invalid. We aren't going to spend a lot of time on sound or unsound, or here we go, this way, strong or weak, because we aren't going to worry very much either about induction or whether the premises are actually true or false. What we're going to do is we're going to look and see if the premises are true, what does that imply about the truth of the conclusion? And that's what you do. You just say, if it's true, like assume it for the sake of argument, if it's true, then would the conclusion follow? Now the book gives you, and my lecture notes give you, a quick way to do this with counterexamples and counterarguments. If you have any questions about the material, remember I do have office hours. I have office chat as well. I won't this week because it's Martin Luther King Day tomorrow, so I won't be at my office. But I do office chat online on Mondays, and please feel welcome to send me a message. If I'm not there at my desk right then I'll come back and I'll find the chat box up. Sometimes it fails, so you might have to be persistent, or you can just email me with questions and we could chat that way. It just wouldn't be as instantaneous. All right, so when we have a text like, if the artist who painted Guernica was a monkey, then the artist is a mammal. The artist is not a mammal, therefore the artist who painted Guernica was not a monkey. Now, maybe we don't know if the artist who painted Guernica was a monkey. In fact, we don't care. All we care is, do the premises actually give support for the conclusion? If they were true, would it mean that the conclusion was true? In this case, necessarily. Okay? So, we could analyze the text in many different ways. We could ask, what language is it in? How clear is it? Is it in cursive? But the only thing that a logician should be concerned about is, if the premises are true, what does that say about the conclusion? Is it a good argument? Is it good formally in particular? So we'll be analyzing a lot of arguments. And we'll start actually not even looking at the informal language. We'll have representations of the arguments in symbolic language, and then we'll be using that to assess more quickly whether things are valid or invalid. And we could take really long arguments and make them very short with logic and check them. And instead of using a more intuitive, like counterexample, counterargument method, we'll have a very rigorous method that we'll be using to be able to check and see if something is valid or invalid. In particular, what we'll be using for the basis of it will be Wittgenstein's truth tables that he invented himself. We'll be using those, and then we'll also be using what is Russell and Whitehead's basic system and a natural deduction system. So that's what we'll be doing in the future, and we'll be pretty quickly symbolizing. In fact, we're going to symbolize today. I'm just going to, once I'm done talking about arguments, I'm going to show you some symbolization and try to instruct you on how to symbolize statements and arguments. So when we're looking in informal language and people are talking, we check to see if they are making an argument, and the easiest way is really look for conclusion indicators. Therefore, thus, hence, so, accordingly. And we're also going to see which type of argument is it. Is it claiming that the relationship is necessary or probable? So there are two main types of reasoning, which are deductive and inductive, and they are distinguished by the relationship of or the nature of the claim between how much evidence, how much support it actually gives for the conclusion. I'll give you an example. If a square has exactly 4 sides and a triangle has exactly 3, then a square is not a triangle. Okay, so that's an argument by definition, because we have a certain concept of what a square is and a certain concept of what a triangle is, and they don't match. So it's making an argument from the concept that we have created to the conclusion that they necessarily aren't the same things. Deductive arguments are evaluated as either valid or invalid on the formal level. So when we look at a form, for example, if the TV is turned on, it is playing. Well, it is playing, therefore it is turned on. Now, does that work or not? Is that a good argument or is that a bad argument? Well, we could analyze it formally, and we put in formal things. We're looking at connectives, in this case, if and then. And if and then are saying, again, basically, that if the first part is true, then the second part is true as well. It's really just making a claim about that. Okay? So, validity and invalidity considers the form or pattern of the argument, not the particular argument that is offered. Make sure you identify whole propositions when you're doing the practice problems there. And I go through types of deductive arguments, but we'll be getting into them so much that this is sort of too easy an analysis level. Yes, it will be on your test. If you have any questions about it, ask. Okay, so induction, on the other hand, the claim is that the premises are likely that the conclusion, make it likely that the conclusion is the case. So if I said, like, I saw on CNN today that this bridge collapsed and a bunch of people died. Therefore, this bridge collapsed and a bunch of people died. That's what is called an argument from authority. And it's basically saying, because this authority said something, it must be so. Well, just because somebody says something doesn't make it so. It only makes it potentially, if that is a trustworthy, reliable source, potentially it makes it more likely that it is the case that the bridge collapsed and so died. Okay? So there are other types of arguments. Every prediction, inductive arguments, every prediction is an inductive argument. We can only say with probability what the future will hold. So if I make a claim that makes what's called a future contingent statement, it says it will be the case, then it's an inductive argument or a prediction, okay, of the prediction type. Inductive generalizations, try to make generalizations, and again, generalizations, they're probably the case. Like, think about when people poll other people, okay? So you poll other people and you try to figure out, well, you know, who's going to win the presidential race this year, and you could poll them and get your answer, but it isn't necessarily the case. Okay, it could be that you polled enough people, or maybe the way you polled wasn't well, so it could be good, it could be bad. Okay, and you'll practice a little bit, you know, analyzing inductive arguments as well, especially on the homework, on the lecture, the lecture notes. Okay, so next we're going to get into symbolizing sentences. But before we do that, I want to finish with the analysis part of it, okay? So, we're looking at deductive versus inductive. What we're doing is actually trying to figure out on the formal level whether it's good, which would be valid, or bad, which would be invalid. The form doesn't hold water. It doesn't support it. Inductive is strong versus weak. That's our strong is good, weak is bad. Everything weak is what we call an uncogent argument. So it's not just bad in form, okay, it's actually bad in actuality, it's a bad argument. The other type of argument, if it's strong, it could be cogent, which means if the premises are true as well as it actually being a strong argument. Okay, same type of analysis occurs for deduction. Okay, so we have valid and invalid, and then we have sound and unsound. So all invalid arguments are unsound. They're not good actual arguments. So there's formal level, actual level. Actual meaning in informal language, talking about hopefully the real world. Okay, and valid is sound if the premises are true. I gotta go. Thanks. Bye.